The concept of not screening pets like we screen residents is just kind of silly because it's just kind of the wild west if you're not doing that. The average settlement on a dog bite, it ranges anywhere from 65,000 to 200,000.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Get Diversified. I am your host today, Jacqueline Landry, and I am here with Lori Trainor. So, Lori, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Cool. So let me give a brief description of Lori. I'm sure she can give us some more color commentary about herself, but I'm going to give it a little bit of an introduction here. So Lori is Director of Asset Owner Solutions for Pet Screening, 30 plus years in multifamily, veteran experience on both operations and the supplier side of the industry. So Lori, give us a little bit more background than that, because that's pretty condensed. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more color on your background.
Sure, absolutely. Well, like I think most people in this industry, I kind of fell into it. I was in retail management and I was helping a girlfriend of mine who had just graduated with a physics degree from Syracuse, who was looking for an apartment. And I was looking for a change. I was tired of the retail hours, the 7 days a week and, 24 hours a day and all of that. And I went out with her, looking for this apartment. I saw these people, these happy people driving golf carts and, waving at people. And I thought, gosh, that looks like a really easy, stress-free job. Let me look into that. What could there be to that? All you do is drive around on a golf cart and wave at people and show apartments. And so I decided to get into property management. Obviously, there's a lot more to that. So I took a step down from where I was and started as a leasing consultant, and very quickly was a property manager and then a regional and then a VP, and went from there. But so I was on the operations side of things for almost 30 years. And then about 4 years ago came to, 30 years. And then about 4 years ago, I came to the supplier side of things. I have worked in affordable housing. I've worked in market rate housing. I've done over 100 new construction lease ups. So I'd like to say, I've kind of seen it from all sides of things.
Yes.
And I'm really, really enjoying this phase of things on the supplier side of things. I think it helps me be a more effective, consultant. I don't like to say salesperson because it's more consultative what I do, since I can literally say, I have been there. I know what you're going through. I did it for almost 30 years.
Yes. I love that too, because it always, there's probably not much that you haven't heard of that you can't come up with a solution because of all your experience in that amount of time. So cool. Let's get right into it. Let's talk about pet policies and animal screening and all of that. So I'm going to let you start, and then I'll just kind of raise hands and interject as we go in there, because this is a learning experience for me as well. So go ahead, get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Over 2/3 of America have pets, right? At least one. I have two. Most people have, at least one. Some people have two, and our renters are no different. And so, the concept of not screening pets like we screen residents is just kind of silly because it's just kind of the wild west if you're not doing that. The average settlement on a dog bite, it ranges anywhere from 65,000 to 200,000. And that's just the settlement. Just like, what, I'm just going to write the check. Here you go away. That's not going to court or whatever. It's only logical to have some sort of pet management system. Pet screening came about a little less than 9 years ago. The founder of our company, John Bradford, is a property owner, small management company, and he started seeing this rise in emotional support animal applications that so many of us see. You and I discussed that. And, he's looking at these applications and he's like, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if it's not. You certainly don't want to accuse somebody of being disingenuous, but you don't want to pass up income. You don't want to put your property at risk or your maintenance people at risk or your staff at risk or your asset at risk unnecessarily. So he started looking out into the industry for help. Where's the true source? Who can I go to for assistance on this? Because we have so many great resources in our industry, but there wasn't one for this. And he kept looking and looking and looking, and he thought, there has to be help for this. And he realized the more he looked, there just wasn't. And he thought, you know what, then I'm going to start it. He's a very resourceful person. And so he's like, well, I'm going to start this system that's going to be the true source for people. So he collaborated with HUD. He collaborated with several attorneys and did, all sorts of research, and he built pet screening. And the bread and butter really of what we do. I mean, there's so much, and I can get into it, but we take that risk and fear and burden of processing those emotional support animal requests off of you, and we put it onto our company. So we have a team of about 40 people, 3 attorneys. One of the attorneys used to work for HUD. Our company actually worked with HUD on the 2020 HUD guidelines. So intimately involved with, what is truly allowed under those guidelines. And they process on average about 55,000 ESA requests every month. We've processed over 1.5 million since we started. They're the true, I don't want to say the authority. HUD is the authority, but they're the experts, right? So every emotional support animal request that comes in is touched by 2 human beings, and they process those. There's no AI involved, unlike everything else that we do in life. There is no AI involved. They go through every form. They make a phone call to every provider and they'll say, Jacqueline, do you have a relationship with Lori? Did you really write this letter? And they'll verify that this is indeed a true form and it meets the 2020 HUD guidelines. Fortunately, only about 40% of those that come through meet the HUD guidelines. So what that means is the other 60% go back to that applicant and they either have to resubmit to try and come up to those 2020 HUD guidelines, or for you as the property owner, they get turned into a household pet. So let me go back to the application process. So everybody that applies has to fall into one of 3 buckets. And this is something you're already doing anyway. So when somebody applies, you ask them, hey, Lori, do you have a pet? And I'll say, no, I don't have a pet. So that's one bucket. Or I'll say, yes, I have an animal, but it's an emotional support animal. Or yes, I have a pet, and that's my little German Shepherd, that's sitting right here. So those are the 3 buckets, and those are the 3 buckets that we operate under right now. So the no pet profile, so it's like an application for an animal. They fill out a couple of questions, and basically it says, no, I don't have a pet. I'm not going to get a pet. I understand my boyfriend can't bring over his pet. I'm not going to operate a doggy daycare out of my apartment. And if I do any of these things, I understand I'm in violation of my lease. So about
I
20
didn't realize that there was anything that you had to do if they said they didn't have a pet. So, great information.
Yeah. And it's really important that we get that. So there's an affirmation at the end of those questions, and it says that I understand if I'm not being truthful here, that I'm in violation of my lease. Jacqueline, about 20% of people that get to the bottom of that say, you know what? And they move over to a household pet profile. They self-admit, you know what? They're going to catch me. So I'm just going to go ahead and fess up and say, I have a pet. So what that means for you is all of a sudden you're collecting pet deposits and pet rent on those people that you wouldn't have collected before. And you also have information on those pets that you've had before, because you're going to have their vaccination information. You're going to have a photo of the pet. You're going to have all of that information. So that's the no pet profile. That's bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 is the emotional support animal. So we kind of touched on that before. So they're going to upload all that information. Our staff is going to process that. They're going to have that uncomfortable conversation that maybe you would have had to have, or your staff would have had to have, saying, you know what, Jacqueline, this doesn't quite meet the 2020 HUD guidelines. We never say, liar, liar, pants on fire. We never say fake. We'll say disingenuous. We keep it as comfortable as possible for everybody. We
Confrontational
never
enough.
say that there are bad animals or bad people, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, we keep it as
So let me
friendly.
ask you a question before you get into that until you continue on with that second bucket. When you say HUD guidelines, can you talk a little bit about what those guidelines are?
Sure. Yeah. So let me pull up the exact verbiage because I don't want to misquote anything here. Got it. There's, of course, with HUD, there's going to be, very specific words. I'm finding it. I'm finding it. One moment. So as I'm looking for that, so everybody that's in that department has gone through an extensive fair housing training class. Most of them have also come from either a veterinary background or a health training background, because they are going to be dealing with HIPAA related documentation. So a lot of information that, very private information. So they're going to be dealing with information that hopefully you are going to be able to keep your site teams from having to deal with, and exposing again liability for your site team. Because right now, the way it works is your site teams are sometimes seeing things that maybe you wouldn't want them to see. And sometimes the gossip train starts. Oh, did you know that so-and-so in 101 has this mental health issue or that going on? And that leads to lawsuits. So that's another thing that comes along with this. You can actually, through our software, you can restrict who has access to what documentation. So you could say nobody on site has access to any of the HIPAA related documentation, only, or VP or above. So that's one of the, I think one of the true, I guess,
Benefits.
magical features of the software is from a liability
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So that's okay. If that's okay, we could talk about it at the end if you can find it, or we can pause this and look for it and talk a little bit more about that. But so you were talking about before I rudely interrupted, the second bucket, which was the emotional.
Yeah, the emotional support animals. So, right. So they're going to be going through all of the requirements for the HUD guidelines, which they know off the top of their head, and obviously I do not, as I'm still searching for it. I apologize. And making sure that everybody complies. And like I said, only about 40% of those folks meet the guidelines. So those other 60% will also wind up switching over to a household pet. So you will wind up collecting pet deposits and pet rents on those individuals. So on average, our clients see about a 37% increase in their pet related rent and deposits within the first year from using our software. Oh, and our software is completely free, by the way. It costs nothing. So there's no contract and there's no cost. It's kind of
Wow.
when I talk to people, I wait to the point that they say to me, this is a
How much is it?
no-brainer.
So how do you guys get paid?
What's that?
How do you get paid?
So that's where I get to the third bucket.
Jacqueline and Melvin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of Get Diversified. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, stop by our website and follow us on social media. Ciao for now. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. And remember, get diversified.